Hey everyone, episode 17. Welcome back to Two Nobodies. And I'm really excited for today's guest. It's someone who, from a distance, I've kind of met and known, but certainly I don't think Ron has known me, but we kind of met the other day, which has been great. Ron Hamilton of Sunworks Farms. I'm really pleased to have him on the podcast. Welcome, Ron.
Hello.
Thanks for joining us. I do want to start today, Ron, by first of all thanking you and Sheila, because about 5 or so years ago, I was actually a vegetarian. I was raised a vegetarian, and there was a point at which I could no longer really just be a vegetarian because the proteins that I was eating just wasn't being digested very well. And so I always told myself that if I ever hit that point at where, it kind of came for the sake of my own health, that I would consider eating animal products. But a huge part of me being vegetarian was really from an ethical standpoint also. Being raised culturally as a vegetarian was one thing, but from an ethical standpoint, it became more and more important. So when I was considering eating meat, my wife, Michelle, we had been to the farmer's market. She started to consume some of your products. And then when I really researched your farm and then saw the invite to go to a family farm day, my goodness, I must say that I was incredibly impressed for sure, but also just the values that you guys embodied very much spoke to me, and I really appreciated that. And still to today, obviously, we consume and very much enjoy your product. So I want to thank you, because to be honest, if it wasn't for you and Sheila and having accessible products here in the Edmonton area, organic, certified, humane, incredibly clean products, I'm not sure if I would have made that transition. And if I did make that transition, I don't know if I'd feel as healthy as I do. So I just wanted to start off by thanking you for that.
Well, thank you very much. That's it's always heartwarming to hear someone with a story like that, for sure.
One of the things that I'm just going to adjust my mic here. I think it's a little loud. One of the things that I like to do, Ron, and maybe there's some of your other customers who like to do this as well, but I came by the farmer's market yesterday, met you in person, and bought a few whole chickens. And what I like to do is, the reason why I buy the whole chickens is because I feel like it can actually be sort of present with the animal, and while I'm sort of quartering it and kind of going through that process. And something that I'm reminded of, and I'm not sure if your wife Sheila still does this, but I do remember in one of the family farm days, her mentioning that when it came to actually processing the bird, that she was the one who cut the neck of the chicken, so to speak, and that was her way of sort of being with the animal at that moment. I'm not sure if I have that sort of story right, or if that's correct, but I'm often reminded of myself. I remind myself that when I'm processing this bird, I know exactly where it came from, and I know the people who process that, and to have that connection is so important to me, and I suspect it's probably important to some of your other customers.
Yeah, Sheila and I still are in our two jobs, in the two jobs that we have in the processing plant. My job is actually to hang the birds and be with them in the live receiving area, and Sheila is still does the bleeding on them, and so it's very important for us to do that. We as the animal is alive, and then as the process of it becoming dead, we are very, very involved in that. That's one thing that I don't think we'll ever not be involved with.
Now, how does that connect to your values, like the values that you had before you started farming, and maybe they've evolved, but is that a reflective thing of your values, would you say?
Yeah, that's true. We do believe that animals, as we raise them and as we process them, they have to be done on as humane as possible way, and so we really that's really one of the things when we started farming was to raise animals humanely, organically, free range, outdoors as much of their life as possible, weather permitting, and those are still really some of our values.
Is it challenging to see when you see some other agricultural practices that maybe not take that sort of humane approach or the values approach? Like, why was that something that was so important to you guys?
It goes back a long ways, and it's started out with moving from the city to the farm, and for health reasons for our family. And but when we moved to the farm, finally started raising animals, it was always important to raise them as humanely as possible and outdoors. That's how we started, and those values have just kept with us for the whole time that we have been farming. And so that's fundamentally, by not being living or not being raised on a farm, coming from the city, not being exposed to the way animals were raised, we decided we're going to raise them in another way than the conventional way. And I think that is because we came to the farm with a fresh slate.
Right.
Our minds weren't hadn't been molded in any other direction. We were wide open, and part of that wide openness was to try to raise animals as humanely as possible.
So you're saying that transition from moving from the city, not being exposed, made that easier. But perhaps if you had been sort of brought up in the traditional way of farming, maybe it would have been a little bit more difficult.
Yeah, that's very correct. Yeah, part of our learning, we started learning. The day we bought the farm, we started learning, and one of the things that we were learnt and took courses on was actually the holistic farming, regenerative holistic farming. And our course, we took a 10-day course in 1995-96 called the Holistic Management course, and that really focused us into the way we farm. It opened our mind way up to a whole bunch of possibilities in farming. It also connected us with a group of people that were thinking the same way at that time. How to
Other
manage.
Farmers were thinking this way? Is that what you meant?
That's correct. A group of people that were thinking this way, of other farmers, other producers. And so the course really just molded us. It gave us, one of the things this course does is it gives us you goals in life. We were able to take those goals that we have and move forward with those goals. And again, part of that was the humane raising of animals. We were introduced to a whole bunch of different ideas at that time, and so very unique ideas, different ideas, and from conventional farming.
When I think about, you said 1995, I'm assuming it would have been very challenging to kind of take the approach that you guys were taking, especially because you're trying to essentially clean the process up from the beginning to the end across the whole chain. Talk to me about that maybe. Like, was that really challenging in 1995? Were people kind of laughing at you for even considering the idea, or did you face any resistance? Or
well, we grew slowly. It was the first couple of years were almost like being homesteaders, with a few animals, a few pigs, a few chickens, and some cows, but then we realized that that we could make a living on our land. We didn't need to be homesteaders and making a living for our family, growing enough food for our family. We could actually go and make it into a business and provide food for other people. And the beginning, our community there, they just thought we were city folks as being homesteaders. And then as we grew, then our community saw that we were actually, wanting to grow. We're wanting to grow food, different food, clean food, and our church community that we're involved with, very accepting community, and so they accepted us as part of their community, even though we were very different, even though we were organic. We raised animals outdoors. They still accepted us for who we are, which I think helped a lot. We had a mentor, a fellow there that has passed away, but he was our mentor, and so we weren't the only person in the community that was thinking differently. Our mentor, Daryl, he was thinking differently about raising animals. I mean, he had been through a couple holistic management courses, grazing animals, regenerative agriculture. That was on his radar back then, even before we started. So it helped to have Daryl in the community thinking a little differently. Sure. And so, our community, accepted us for who we were.
And now do you look back and are amazed just how much it's grown? Like, when I feel like the brand of Sunworks is so well known, at least in the Edmonton area. And I know that you guys have expanded, I think, to parts of Calgary as well, if I'm not mistaken. And just, it's definitely grown a whole bunch. You must be so thrilled, but also, do you feel a sense of surprise, or how do you feel about the way it's grown?
I think what you said, a sense of surprise, is probably the best way to describe it, because we really don't feel that, we still feel that we're growing 80 chickens when we first started. That was the first time we grew 80 chickens. We still feel that same way as that we're growing, 80 chickens, and it's on a much larger scale. But we don't really think about it. It's our life. It's who we are, what we live. And so we really don't think that we're a larger operation or anything like that. We still go to the farmers markets. We still talk to people. We make those relationships. That is actually what powers us, is the relationships we make with people, and the ability to provide just clean food like this to people and communities. We actually started at one of the first farmers markets we started was in Calgary, and our friend of ours that had taken a holistic management course and was in Calgary selling beef. He asked us to come down and help and sell chicken, and that was really one of our start. We grew. We just grew. The opportunities came to us, and we really never said no to the opportunities. We just kept on growing. We really wanted, and I guess the back of our mind all the time was to this clean food, and to as many people as possible, because we knew we would get comments week after week after week, and we still do, of people looking for cleaner food. Their families need food for with no preservatives and no chemicals and allergens, and it goes on and on and on, the reasons why people are looking for our food. But every week this is reaffirmed, this is why we're doing it. And so we actually don't feel that we still feel that we're Ron and Sheila with 80 chickens. That's
quite humbling for you to say that. I mean, especially since you guys have scaled up quite a bit. Do you ever feel like if you scaled up any further that you could be compromising your values, or do you think those things are never in tension?
Yeah, and we've actually discussed that, throughout the years, is whether our values would be compromised and where we stop in our growth.
Which values would those be, Ron? Like, could you identify those?
Yeah, that would be like not raising animals in a humane way, especially in a certified humane way. Not being organic. Our employees are always very, very part of what we do.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely not Ron and Sheila. We do have some absolutely fabulous people that
Mm-hmm.
that work with us, and so those, look after our people, look after our animals, look after our land. That's
Mm-hmm.
another big one is look after the land. And any of those values that would be compromised, we just wouldn't go any further. Is what
Right.
we do.
Right.
To raise more animals, we can, without compromising our values. We do have land that we can use, that would still bring chickens out of doors, and our
Mm-hmm.
turkeys, and the grazing practices that we have. I know years ago, when we moved into in 2004, when we moved into the Calgary Farmers Market, the new Calgary Farmers Market in the Currie Barracks, we finally went from a fresh summer product and then self-frozen throughout the winter. We finally went to a year-round production, and my wife and my two daughters at the time, they said, "No, Dad, we can't do that. No, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. We're not doing it."
Mm-hmm.
So we discussed it, and then we said, okay. I came back to them. Okay, so if we get a humane certification, if we work on our humane certification to prove to our customers that that we're still raising animals humanely indoors in the winter,
Mm-hmm.
and so they accepted that, and we have worked towards having a fresh product year round, still underneath the certified humane scope or regulations. We started in shortly after that in 2004. It was early 2005. We went and got certified by a humane society, and I can't even remember whether it was the Winnipeg Humane Society or the Manitoba Humane Society. We got certified through. We started their program with them, worked with them to push their program forward. Then we went to the BCSBCA program. One of the reasons why we went to the BCSBCA program was that our organics inspectors could also be a certified humane inspector. Mm-hmm. And recently, the BCSBCA's mandate they moved away from doing farm animals in their humane society, certifying them, and so we went with the certified humane protocol. And it was they every time we move from an animal welfare organization, it seems that it's the auditing is not harder, but is more thorough. And this last time the certified humane is there was a lady out of Edmonton, and she was down for 5 days on the farm for 5 days. And she is a doctor. I think she's a doctor in animal welfare, is what she is. So really intense audits, but it wasn't intense for us because we were always in that direction and constantly getting better. And we get an audit. It's no different than an organic audit or an SPCA audit or a humane audit or chicken producers audit or any of the other the organizations that we are audited by. And if they mention something and we have a non-compliance, we just work towards the non-compliance and move forward and make our operation to be compliant. And it's what we do.
I was going to say, if your customers weren't, so first question is, are your customers really wanting this as well? Like the stringency that you guys apply on yourself, are customers also sort of demanding this? That'd be the first question. And then the second question is, if they weren't demanding this, do you feel like you would still kind of continue the way that you want to move forward with?
Yeah, I'll answer your second question first. Is that really, this is something we really believe in, and we would we would be raising chickens. If we weren't raising chickens for customers, we'd be raising chickens for our family. Like this is what we would be doing. So yes, the customers are, they always, they search for this, is what people do. You know, one of the common, when we meet a new customer comes to us and they say, well, I searched you guys out on the internet. Okay, I saw what you guys do, and you know, I really, really, really appreciate what you do. This is what I want. And then also then at the farmers market, when we introduce ourselves to new people, this is something that we talk to them about, is our values, is how we raise our animals, and the why, and also the why is, right, you know, just super clean food for our family, from humanely raised animals.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's you know, just, it sounds like you folks are just very grounded to what you want to do. And I think that in itself, I would imagine, would resonate with a lot of people. Obviously it resonates with Michelle and I, because we buy her products. So, I think it's incredible. I do want to talk a little bit about that. You got into the sort of certified humane and sort of what that means. And so I probably don't need to ask more about that, but I did want to ask a little bit about, I think it was the last family farm day I came to. So that probably would have been 2019 in person. And you had spoken about a new way of processing your chickens. And it was like this sort of oxygen kind of deprivation thing. And I remember coming home to Michelle and I said, they just took it to another level. Like, no one's asking them to do this, but they took it to another level. And I actually, you know, I went online to sort of research it, and I just don't know how you can get any more humane. Essentially, like, you're putting the birds to sleep, right? Is my understanding. But do you want to talk to our listeners about that, maybe?
You know, we've always, you know, that was the one point in our processing that we felt we could try to be better, and that's how to stun our birds, how to make sure that the birds have least amount of stress as they're being processed. And I've researched different systems for many years. This was always when we built our plant. This was always a goal for us to do this. And there's a couple different ways. One is the controlled atmospheric stunning, which uses a CO2 gas to put the birds to sleep, and or there is the low atmospheric pressure stunning that we have on the farm. We were fortunate that we were able to purchase this unit here. It came up in Alberta here at a very reasonable cost, and so the minute that we were able it was available, we took it on and brought it into the processing plant. And that's very correct. The birds just go to sleep, and then you know, there is, from that point on, there is no pain for the birds as they're processed. And those are one of the things that people, you know, we get people say, well, you know, the birds just had one bad day. And, you know, we say we raise them humanely, and they say, well, and I've had people say, well, they just had one bad day. And, you know, they don't have a bad day that day. They just fall asleep, and then we process them and stun them so that they basically do not feel any pain at all.
This is an odd question, but do you, because obviously you would have done this, you know, tens of thousands of times, do you ever notice, like, when you're moving the birds over, I'm not sure how you transport them to the facility, but like, do you notice there's a little bit of change in them? Like, do they recognize that something is happening? Like, that's going to be traumatic, or?
And that's a great question, because you know, that was another one of the things we want to make sure that the birds do it doesn't stress the birds at all. And so basically we load the birds in the modules, and at night the birds sleep close together anyways. So what we do is in the early evening we load the birds into the modules. And so modules are they have drawers in them, and so we pick the birds up. We use two legs by the two legs and or over top of them, and cup them in their wings and put them into the drawers.
Mm-hmm.
Then they're transported to the processing plant. The lights are shut off. They calm for all. They're totally calm for all the night. They're sleeping no different than they would ever sleep before. And then in the morning, a complete module is put into the laps, and so there is no the bird is not touched again. It's only touched to bring from the field shelters or the barns into the modules, and that's then the last time they're touched. So before there is no stress.
That was actually I think the only part of the chain that I didn't quite understand, because I think everything was explained during those tours, but I always thought about it after, sort of what's that process like from getting the birds into there. So thank you for that. Yeah, that's really great to hear, and the fact that you're thinking about that is amazing. I wanted to shift a little bit, because I remember hearing when you guys first started and you got to your land. Tell folks about what the land looked like, because my understanding is that it was pretty much stripped of nutrients. It was like this sort of maybe a monoculture farm perhaps, or something, but the soil just wasn't rich at all, and then you went through a process of building that up.
Yeah, the land that we had bought had been homesteaded in the early 1900s. And it was poor land at that time. It wasn't great land. The trees weren't great, big, huge trees. One of my neighbors told me that this probably the reason why the folks homesteaded the land is because they never had as much land to clear, because the trees weren't huge. Okay, so the land was was poor land even at that time. The 30s came, the wind blew off a lot of the topsoil on the land. And then the land had been continuously farmed with monocultures, as you say, for over 30 years. And so when we came to the farm, within the first year or so, actually first 2 years, we started sowing back grasses, onto our land, and making grasslands out of our land. Our land in maybe 94, 95 was totally back to grasslands, all the land that we owned. This land is not, we've never tilled the land since then. The land is always growing. We've added manures, animal manures from all of our animals, our compost manures back to the land. And the whole way we raise, and especially ruminants, the way we raise cattle is to actually enhance the growth of our topsoil, is really what we do. So what we do is we actually time control graze, is what it's called. Is we move animals every day throughout our land onto a fresh pasture, fresh piece of grass. By doing
and
that,
why is that more important than like if you just kind of let them go?
So basically, when we move the animals onto the fresh piece of grass, we move them, and they're fairly tightly compacted into an area. So all the grass is either trampled or eaten in that small paddock, and there's enough food for them for the day, so they're not going too deep. There's just enough grass so that they'll be able to have one or two mouthfuls of the grass, and in that whole area. They tramp it down, they defecate on it, they urinate on it, and then we move them to another piece of land right next to them. Okay, so with electric fencing, that has made a huge difference in being able to control animals and being able to work with animals like we do. So we give them a couple acres or an acre or a couple acres, or depends how many animals we have, and give them a fresh piece of grass every day. This is not very time consuming. It takes maybe 20 minutes a day, half an hour a day to move into a fresh piece of grass, so that the grasses do not get overgrazed. In grasses, when you have overgrazing, you also have very, very shallow roots, and so there's not very drought resistant at all. When you have animals, or you have grasses that come up, even go to head, or like the meadow brown grass goes to head, and you have tall grasses. Well, the roots in those tall grasses are deep into the ground. When they're cut off and ate or trampled, that stops. That growing of the root stops, and then they use the reserves from the root to come up and grow again. And some of the small fiber roots, they die off, and that's actually how you store carbon, is that in that whole system, that pulsing of the land, and we're using animals to pulse the land. Very, very similar to how the bison, for thousands of years in North America, and especially around the Edmonton area, was the tall grass prairie. And years ago I ended up talking to a lady that was in her 90s that had come out to a community just east of Edmonton, out on the prairies, and she said that her parents wouldn't let her and the kids walk in the grass because the grass was too tall. They were afraid they would lose the kids in the grass. The grass was that high. She talked about grass being to the over the belly of a horse. That's how tall the grass was. So that tall grass prairie. We still see that here in when we get the rain, and we can get grass that is as high as 6 feet high. I have pictures of grass that is over 6 feet high. So when you get that grass, you put animals into it, you knock all that down. It's basically flat on the field. It's got manure on it, urine on it, and then all that grass comes down, and then the microbes start to eat it, and there's the whole ecosystem of the grasslands comes alive again, and ultimately you make topsoil.
You've probably got some amazing, like, large earthworms and just all kinds of activity going under the soil. Have you ever got it tested or really like dug deep to kind of see what it looks like down there? Or
we take a shovel out every once in a while and just go down and see what we're doing there, and you can actually see the humus on the top. You can see the roots. You can see the fibers, and you can see where the topsoil has grown, and that's really to grow topsoil is a long term, very, very long term. It doesn't grow very, very fast. Every year's a different, just no different than a tree in a tree ring. If you look at the tree ring, every ring is a different width, and in some years you can grow topsoil a lot easier, faster. In other years, it's a little drier, the conditions aren't quite as well. That year is not. You don't grow topsoil quite as fast.
You're just talking about sort of dry conditions. Like in Alberta, we can get really dry summers. I mean, the last couple of summers have been pretty wet, but I'm not sure what it's been like on your farm. How would you say, you talked about that the soil and improving the soil health and having these grassroots go down quite a distance can really make things drought resistant. What happens during those dry periods? Do you find your farm is pretty resilient to dry conditions because you've worked out the soil?
Yeah, that's we do when we do get a shower. our soil is like a big sponge.
Amazing.
It just all the humus on the top of it, the roots, it just sucks up that soil. When we first came to the farm and started pasturing poultry, raising animals, our poultry in the a rain would come along, a half-inch rain come along, we'd be running out to our chicken shelters to make sure that there was no challenges with the chickens because of the rain. Now we can go out and it can rain an inch and we have no problems at all, because all this organic matter, it pulls that water into the soil, and the soil then it can filter down into deeper into our soil. We're not, with the organic matter on, we're not drying it out. The sun doesn't dry it out. It's not this piece of black that the sun just dries totally out. It's there's greenery on it. There's like I say, the organic matter. It really works well even though there may be a downpour and we get an inch and a half. When that inch and a half comes, it doesn't run off. It stays on our land.
Yeah, and that's important for so many reasons. People talk about sort of with cattle farming and the runoff from water, and how that can affect water systems and all that. Like I would think you're not really contributing to that. And even from like a climate change perspective, more mainstream attention is being focused on the importance of soil health as sort of sequestering carbon. I don't know, have you heard of this study that came out of Georgia, a Georgian farm? I think it's called White Oaks, and they had a third party. I think their farm is like 3,000 acres. It's a sizable farm. But they had a third party group study their farm, and they do a lot of this sort of regenerative farming, very similar, if not the same, to sort of what you guys do. And they're mainly a cattle farm, but they have other animals as well. And I think it's the same process that you just spoke about, but they found that, I think I have it here, their net emissions is at a negative. So they have a negative 3.5 kilograms of CO2 of emissions per kilogram of meat, because their soil has been worked in so well, and they have just amazing land that they're actually sequestering more carbon than they're emitting from their agricultural practices. I'd be curious if you guys hit a similar mark. I would think
sequestering carbon through agriculture is I think is one way that we can actually work with climate change. You can sequester carbon through agriculture. You have to work at it. You have to monitor it. It's got to be quantifiable. But through good forestry practices, through urban forests, through agricultural land, we can sequester carbon. We can sequester from 15 tons per hectare and up. Some of the studies have shown. And if you were to do the math on our agriculture land that we have here in Alberta, and it was to be well managed to sequester carbon, we worked at it to sequester carbon. Even though our oil and gas industry it does emit a lot of carbon in the whole process, we could take that carbon out and actually and put it back into our lands, into our forests, into urban forests, into our agriculture. So I really feel that this is something that we will see in the long term, is that we will get paid to sequester carbon, and our oil and gas industry here in Alberta, I feel if we own that carbon, we know how much carbon we're putting out, we own it. Well, let's use an Alberta-made solution to bring that carbon back out and actually work hard as a province to actually pull the carbon emissions back and move them into the ground. And it could be there's other ways, carbon capture,
and storage,
storage, 4 or 5 different ways that we can use it. But agriculture will still be the backbone of that.
So then, you're making a good long-term case for why, just from even sort of being part of a carbon trading process for, having the type of farm that you do, what is preventing conventional farmers from almost adopting the kind of style of farming and organic farming? Is it purely just money, and is that sort of what's driving it? Because I would think, this might be a naive question, but I would think there are probably a lot of farmers who have the values and want to share in the same values that you and your wife do, but for other reasons that's driving them, they're just not moving forward with that. What's your take on that? Like, why aren't large conventional farmers switching to this method?
And I guess that's, you just said it there, large conventional farmers. Okay, farming is going into a very, very large farms, where the smaller farms are disappearing. The closer you are to the city, you do see smaller farms, quarter section farms and stuff like that. But as we get out into the farming community, large farms are the norm. Tens of thousands of acres, large farms, and it is a system that can be used from one end of Alberta or to the other end of Alberta, North American wide. How do you plant tens of thousands of acres in a spring and do it as quickly as possible? So it's a prescription. It's easy to do. There's the whole agriculture industry has invested very, very heavily into this whole system of agriculture that we have right now. So that's, to me, that's the I used to say is that if we spent the same amount of money or half the amount of money that the conventional industry spends on research, on technology, and if we spent that on organic farming compared to conventional farming, we would see a quantum leap in our organic farming practices, yields, a lot of different things, even from grain. We were starting to see some progress in actually selecting grains that would work in an organic system compared to a conventional system. A lot of the breeding, the plant breeding, the grains breeding has been being bred for conventional systems, which is a different plant than an organic system. They need different. There's different needs. So the conventional industry is very, very entrenched, and it's very hard to move people and industries. And we are known in the industries, all the way through all the industries, as organic. So there is organic there. We're accepted, but we're not really a part of. We're not making a real difference right now. Just with the amount of acres that we have, the amount of animals we have, it's not. It doesn't make that much of a difference.
So what would need to happen for things to change? Is this more of a consumer driven sort of revolution or a shift that would, something that was consumer driven that would create the shift, or is this more on the supply side? Like, is there a big shift in industry that needs to happen? Like you talked about, sort of allocating research dollars a little bit differently towards organic farming. Maybe that would create a shift. But I'm sure it's not a simple black or white sort of, yes, it's the consumers who are really going to drive the shift. But what's your take if you were to say, here, these are the things that would really create some tipping points?
Well, from a carbon point of view, that would be if we did get paid, agriculture did get paid for sequestering carbon.
Sequestering carbon, okay.
It would that would change a lot of the ways people farmed, okay? If that was an actual part of their farming operation, they could get paid for it. that would, like I say, that would be a huge thing from a carbon point of view. From an organic point of view, the consumer definitely, the health system definitely. Those are some of the drivers to do that, to change to people to be organic. When you realize that our whole food system and is again based on conventional agriculture. So it starts at the plant, ends up in the mouth of the consumer, but it also goes back. All those companies involved are based on conventional farming practices, unhealthy, not very healthy food production or the options. Um, you know, why do we have a soft drink industry? That's been proven and shown, and that the amount of sugars in foods are not very healthy at all. Okay,
Absolutely.
cancers, they say stay away from sugar. Just keep your sugars down. Um, is one of the things that doctors do tell the patients. Stay away from the preservatives in the food, the chemicals in your food. The system is not is half would have to change dramatically, and it's the consumers would drive it, but they would have to drive it through government. They would have to drive it through their supermarkets, their governments, a multi pronged to ever change anything dramatically. We see in Europe, organics is a little bigger than we are here, but not by, not 50%. It's still it's still a smaller part of the and they've been they've been they've been trying for more years to change to a more organic, and government, even from a government point of view, but it still takes time to change.
Well, I was just going to, like, I think I remember hearing maybe 3 or 4 years ago when McDonald's said that they were going to shift to, it might have been free range eggs. I don't really know. It could have been free run. But nevertheless, the whole point was that it's these big buyers and these big purchasers like McDonald's that can really shift agricultural systems. And until these big players don't make these shifts, it's great that individual consumers are asking for these things, but in terms of shifting an entire industry, it's really these big players that make the difference.
We don't, in Canada here, we're such a small country, such a small, large country, that it's very hard to make these to have even the consumer in the North American or even processors in North America to do much to change. We see it slowly but surely. I mean, General Mills has went and they're really pushing for regenerative agriculture in buying some of the grains. We do see people taking colorants and preservatives out of food. Larger corporations. Slowly but surely, we're moving somewhat to a. There are, I guess, light at the end of the tunnel. We're moving that direction and being pushed by consumers. But it will be a slow process.
The health angle is interesting, like just talking about sort of the benefits to one's health, and you spoke a little bit about your story and how you guys you and Sheila started this because of how it would benefit your family's health. I kind of wonder if that's something that you get asked about a lot, whether your products are actually going to sort of make a difference. And yes, I understand that it's clean entirely, but really, does that matter? Do you get that question often, or do people kind of challenge that thinking?
The consumer from a farmer's market is somewhat of a different consumer than a
True. Yeah. Okay.
So people come to a farmer's market just to experience the farmer's market. There's an experience that goes along with that. Almost ends up sometimes being entertainment for people. But other people do come to a farmer's market because they're searching for better food. They're searching for something different. We do get people ask us about our food, what's in our food. We put that out quite strongly. What our food is. So it's the farmers market really is a great way to actually connect with people, talk to people, tell our story, talk about our food, talk about the health benefits of our food. We do get people, customers come back and talk to us about all sorts of food related and health related stories, and we have to learn to be good listeners, because people, especially when they're having health challenges, are they're very involved in their health challenges, and they want us to listen to their story about their health journey. And our family has health journeys too, with all the allergies and some of the Sheila's fibromyalgia and various health challenges we've had over the years. And so we can connect with those people because we understand their health journey. We've been on health journeys ourselves, so we can connect with those people, and we can show them that yes, our food is cleaner, is better. We had numerous people come to us and say, "Look at me now! I've lost how many pounds by eating, your food, but just a better diet." And that was part of how they lost the weight, was because of their diet, and also just eating our food was the basis of this, or getting better. People feeling better, they come back and they say, I feel so much better. We use naturopaths. We started out in the early 1990s, working with naturopaths over the years. Got to know many of the naturopaths in the Calgary and Edmonton area, and so that's where our health, how we look after our health, is through food, using our advice from our naturopaths, and so totally connect with people on a health food basis.
Well, you'll have to connect with my wife, because she's also a naturopathic doctor here in Edmonton. So we'll have to connect you a little bit more closely. Yeah. One of the things I noticed and I will say that I will admit to you, Ron, that we would love to buy your products 100% of the time, but sometimes it gets a little expensive for us, but we try our best. But what I will say is that when I will quarter up a chicken from a conventional farm versus yours, I do notice a difference. I notice a difference even by the composition of each animal. And so I've done this many times to say that my observation is consistent enough that maybe there's some truth to it. In that with the conventionally raised bird, I find that the meat is a lot more watery and it's a lot softer and not as dense. I definitely notice more broken bones, because I suspect that has to do with the handling of the animals. Whereas I never find a broken bone in any of your animals, and I do find that the meat is more just dense and thicker and holds together a lot better. I don't know if there's something with the feed or what that explains that, but that's got to mean something.
I'll start off with the price on that, and that is something that Sheila and I still, we have tried to keep our prices as low as we can. That is something our family has said is one of our goals is to feed people. And if you have an extremely high priced product, well then you don't feed people. There's only a certain portion of people that can eat your product. So, but saying that, we do get people from all walks of life, from everywhere, coming and buying our food. Some people eat less meat. We are not. What I tell people myself is that eat less meat, eat better meat. If you're gonna eat meat, so in their family's diet, they may not eat as much meat, but they come to us to eat better meat. Is what they do. Chicken raising is an industry. There's billions of chickens raised every year, in billions and billions of chickens raised every year in the world, and it's all, and again basically goes back to the farmer making money. How can I make money on this bird? Okay, so there are many ways that people in conventional people raise the birds to be profitable, and we need to be profitable, but we're also trying to grow a better bird is what we're trying to do. So the feed is different. Our feed is different. It's organic. Our spacing is different in our birds. Our density that we have from an SPCA and also a certified organic is way lower than a conventional raised bird. We're not transporting them for hundreds and hundreds of miles to the processing plant. The whole system that we have is different, so different than the conventional system that that's probably the reason why you're seeing a difference in the bird, because every part of the process is different. It's the same. We raise the same bird. It's raised the same. Chickens are raised the same, or not raised the same, but chickens grow on a conventional farm and an organic farm. We get a chick, we raise the chicken, and we process it. But it's the other than that, there's a lot of differences in the conventional raised chicken and in our raised chicken.
So we were talking about the price point, and that's really encouraging to hear that's a priority for your family to sort of keep that and really feed people. But I suspect a question that still people have though is just generally like, why is organic food and organic meat, like, why is it so expensive? Like, and this is maybe a naive point of view again, you're talking about cattle, if they're just sort of eating the grass and it's sort of self-sustaining itself, like you would think like there's less input costs and so on. I can't speak for the birds themselves, but even the birds, the chickens are eating from the ground, and I know you're feeding them I think alfalfa and some other kind of grains and stuff. But what is really the drivers for why organic and certified humane and free range? Why is it so much more expensive? Is it just the scaling, like economies of scale, where these large farms just are able to really drive down costs? Can you speak to that?
Scale is definitely part of it. We use different production methods in the grain, in growing grain. We're not using NPK and mining it and bringing it from an artificial source for our plant's nutrients. We're using cover crops. We're using regenerative practices. We're sequestering carbon. So when the grain is more expensive for the feed. The scale isn't there. And so that really is the supply. There's not as in the world. There's not as much organic grains in the world, organic production in the world. There it goes into not only animal feed, but it goes into human feed, and so with all the feed costs being higher, the labor costs being higher, and looking after the land, being very conscious of looking after the land. There's a lot of different reasons why regenerative agriculture is more expensive than conventional agriculture. And the more regenerative agriculture that we have, well, then it's going to help all of us as grow a different food system.
Can anything be done from a government standpoint, or is there anything else that could be done external to this, or the industry that can really help drive down organic food prices?
It's even on a distribution from one distribution system. There's so many there's so many people that this food that we get goes through so many people. Major grocery stores will go right to Heinz, and Walmart will go right to Heinz and buy right from them. Okay, here we get a lot of layers of people in there that take that do just because of the volumes and the outlets that we see, that they're not like the major food stores. So that's part of one of the reasons of the price. Can you get back to the question? I sort of lost it there, sir. Yeah.
No, that's okay. It was more of like whether governments or whether somebody else, like another, what are some other measures that could be taken to potentially reduce organic food prices or organic meat prices?
Just the acceptance of the more that there is, we'll accept it. The acceptance of the consumer, the more product that there is, the more the whole organic system grows, then the prices will come down. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we still do call apples to apples and oranges to oranges, because not all organic folks raise chickens the way we raise chickens. We are, when you go to a natural food store, there are chickens there that are raised, or like Costco, they're raised differently than ours, and they're cheaper. And so we have, like I say, we have more labor in ours. Our agriculture practices are regenerative, especially we're wanting to move our animals out of doors, raise them out of doors so that they're totally out of doors, in a free range system, which isn't regulated into the organic standards, that they have to be raised in a chicken shelter way that we raise them out of doors in the summertime. I feel that this is maybe way the organic industry may be moving, and I would like them to move, and I have pushed the organic industry to move forward into more of a regenerative, into a more of a, outdoor production, making sure, and more of humane, and that's part of what I've done when I was on the the Canadian General Standards Board Organic Technical Review Committee that sets the standards for organics in Canada. I've been on worked on those committees for almost 20 years. And part of my push is always to move forward in higher animal welfare, more regenerative practices, and that's really part of where my push has been.
And what's the resistance when you were on the board that you would get, or are they moving towards this? Is this sort of taking time, or is there active resistance against that?
It will take time. You know, the industry is still an industry. We do have the different you know, the chicken producers of our Canadian chicken producers or chicken farmers
Mm-hmm.
of Canada. You know, they are entrenched in their industries. Okay, and you know, so slowly but surely we will move forward to that. In fact, you know, all of the commodity boards, the Chicken Farmers of Canada, Egg Producers of Canada, Turkey Farmers of Canada, all of those folks, you know, from when we started in the industry, they have moved forward in their animal welfare standards. They have moved forward significantly in the last 10 years. When we were certified humane in 2005, no
Mm-hmm.
one had heard of being certified humane. No one had heard of
Right.
standards. Okay, and when you realize that that's not that long ago, okay, you know, we're in time, in life, you know, that's not that long ago, and all of the commodity boards have moved further and further for higher animal welfare standards. So it's a slow process, and we just got to make sure
Mm-hmm.
that the organic standards are in the forefront of this. That we never
Mm-hmm.
that we try to be a little bit higher than the commodity industry is and we are with some of our space limits or density limits, but for floor raised birds, the conventional industry right now for floor raised birds is the same as the organic industry. You know, at 2.707 square feet per bird. So you know, we are the conventional industry has moved, and the chicken farmers, the egg farmers of Canada have moved towards our organic humane standards. And where are we going to go next? Well, is that actually moving birds outdoors and to have their life out of doors rather than in a free range pop hole system? You know, the last standards that we have, we actually have to supply in a pop hole free range system. We actually got to have some enrichments. We have to have some shade. We have to have to encourage the birds to move out of doors.
Could these birds actually live all year outdoor, especially in
No,
Canada and in Alberta?
Not in Canada.
Okay.
You know, BC,
Okay.
yeah, BC, well, even in BC because of the wet and the cold and everything
Yeah.
like that. So weather, we're always talking weather permitting is what we are. So
Okay.
but
Okay.
even
when these, no, sorry, go ahead, Ron, please.
even when they're indoors in the wintertime, we want to make sure that their life is better than the conventional system, even indoors.
Mm-hmm. If we did raise these organic standards, what is your reaction to the question of like, can organic feed the world? Like, can you know, if everyone's sort of shifted to this way of agriculture, could we actually feed the world with these sort of higher standards? What's your general reaction when you get that kind of question?
So that goes back to what I talked about before. If we did the research that needed to be done, and had the money that was spent on research, the money that has been spent on research for the last since Second World War on conventional farming practices, and had that research done into an organic regenerative agriculture system. If we had that research done, I feel that there would be no problem to feed the world, because we would be doing many other things with our land. We'd be intercropping, we'd be cover cropping, we'd be the practices that we would have and the knowledge that we would have. We could definitely feed the world. feeding the world is coming at but does come at a price, and we're seeing that price right now of feeding the world.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
is so we have to see whether food grown in North America should feed the world, or Canada should feed the world, or should we, feed the world where those people live, to feed the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other question too. Do we want to go into a monoculture agriculture, conventional agriculture system in a country where maybe we should still go back and actually feed the people right on the land that they live on, or in the communities that
right, keep it local.
Yeah.
Could regenerative farming then? Yeah, I guess no, that makes some sense. I was taking my thinking somewhere else, but yeah, I think you answered that question. So then what do you see as sort of the next major developments when it comes to organic agriculture and regenerative farming? Is it, you talked about the standards, but like just are there any other major developments that you're sort of tracking to sort of really more to push the boundaries and to push the limits of your type of farming?
And that is basically the acceptance of regenerative farming in the community. Very not really accepted really well. We're getting people out there that are showing that these practices can happen, and I think that's really where we need to work on is to have some leaders in the field actually out there that are showing that we can use these regenerative practices. Or carbon sequestration is going to be a big thing. Sequestering carbon is going to be a big thing in the next number of years. Move towards organics and land management, working with them together. I think that's we're not in separate camps. We need to think of the big picture here, that we're all working for the same goal, and that's just super clean, real food. That's good for the land, good for the animals, and I think that's where we need to all look. We need to work together as different organizations, but not combating each other and saying that we're better or we're worse, but we're all working for the same goal.
That's well said. I want to shift just kind of at the end actually back to cattle, and then also talk about another animal. But I always see this question about grass-fed and grain-fed beef, and I was reading about sort of how you raise your animals and reading about the cattle. And there is a point in the way you raise your cattle where you do feed them some grain, if I'm not mistaken. Or there's like I think you said something about finishing. So I can't remember exactly what it was, but.
Yeah, no, we don't finish our animals on grain. Okay.
Okay.
It's a grass-based diet. And we do use alfalfa meal, okay, which is the dried alfalfa pellets is what it is. So it's a grass base, and so we use that as our energy source, especially in the wintertime, and high quality hay. Try to get as high quality hay as we can, and realizing that animals, the whole natural cycle of animals is that they will get put on a lot of weight, gain a lot of fat in the summer, and then as the winter goes on, they do get leaner, and especially in March before the grass comes, our animals can get quite lean. We try to use them with the hay and with the alfalfa pellets. We try to keep as much of their condition, their finish on, but the animals do get leaner, and then all of a sudden the summer comes, and the meat changes a little bit, and a little fatter, and it's just, this is nature's cycle is what it is. So it's not by feeding a lot of grain to animals you get the acidosis problem. There's many reasons why feeding a lot of grain to animals is not a good reason. even when animals are grazing in the summer, there's methane microbes that are down just right on the surface of the earth, actually, and taking in some of the methane that the cattle have put out. And this is something new I've been reading about, is that these microbes actually thrive on the methane from the cattle, the grass finished cattle. And so nature has worked for thousands and thousands, millions of years.
It knows what it's doing, right?
Yeah, yeah. And a ruminant why does it have four stomachs? Okay, well, that's to eat grass.
Right.
And not saying that an animal will come into a grassy area that has the plants have went to seed, and they chew off all the seed off the meadow brome or the grasses or some of the other grasses that we have there. They'll chew off the seeds, but at the same time, in the springtime they're back onto fresh grass before that grows. No different than the bison that we had here in this country, for the millions and millions of bison that we had in this country, and the way they shaped our land and created topsoil, and they would basically eat what was available and go around, and as they trampled the ground and came back, the thunderstorms would come, a lot of water back onto the land. The fires would start in the springtime, come through, keep the prairie open. Fires would come through the tall grass from the year before, and they said that the fires could go as fast as 100 kilometers an hour, and they would come through the anywhere where there was trees, young trees or willows, and they just sear the leaves right off that, and they kept the prairie. That's how the prairie kept going. But that carbon would fall down when it was burnt off the top of that. It wouldn't burn into the ground. It was going so fast, the carbon would come down in the ground, drop down into the ground, and act as a source of nutrients for the plants again. It was a cycle that was so complete, and so basically, as an animal, that's what or as a farmer, we're trying to replicate that cycle.
Sure. Can you be as productive in engaging in regenerative farming of cattle than you would compared to conventional sort of grain-fed cattle?
It's a different product.
Yeah. Okay.
So in a feedlot, and then we have to go back and take a look at the carbon footprint of all of what we do too. I mean, at the same time, different product, different carbon footprint. They push animals a lot faster through using grain. They're not 24 to 30 months old. They're 16 months old maybe. And so it's a different product, a different process. Can we be as productive? That's maybe not as productive, but then at what cost? What is the cost through the system and through our environment to do that too?
Okay. You spoke about bison. This is sort of my last question here is, have you guys thought about farming bison? What are the challenges with that? Because I do see there are more farmers in Alberta, at least, who are moving towards farming bison as opposed to cattle.
Bison are they're an animal that requires fencing. They're a very wild animal. And they can be very aggressive, and especially in the handling production. Okay, and so we decided no, we're that isn't going to be part of our farm. We've got other animals. We've moved into just raising sheep now, and so that's some of the direction that we went in. Rather than a bison, we'll go with a sheep. They can't hurt you real bad. So
yeah, okay. Ron, I usually ask 2 questions, and I usually send them to the guest, but I forgot to do that. So hopefully you can just kind of play along, and if you don't have the answers, that's okay. But it's more so about you, and in the sense of, so the first question is, if there were 5 people, dead or alive, that you could have sort of a meal with, you could have them collectively, or you could have them on their own, who would those 5 people be?
Oh boy, that's a hard question. I mean, some of our mentors, that we've had mentored, it's still great to read some of their and talk to them, and so read some of their material, and those. I think that's someone that would help us. Anybody that would help us move forward in what we do. And we could bounce ideas off of and discuss various ways of how we farm and our lives. People that help us in moving forward in our business to grow food like we do. So those would be the people that I would like to have discussions with, or have a meal with. Okay. Yeah.
Right. And what would you be eating?
Basically, I eat chicken.
Okay.
That's my food, and garden vegetables. We're still eating potatoes from our garden last year, so
okay.
We do lots of garden vegetables and chicken thighs.
What's your favorite way of cooking chicken thighs?
Just basically in the oven with some herbs and in the wintertime, some squash and some potatoes. That's really in the oven, just baked.
Love it.
That's my favorite way.
Yeah, love it. Last question is, besides sort of the circle of life, what do you know for life? What do you know in life to be for sure? Like, what's true about life? I should have sent you this question before. I feel really bad asking you this now, but
what is true in life is that is our children, and again that goes back to my grandchildren. My grandchildren are getting older. My oldest grandson is 15 right now. Have a tremendous bond with my oldest grandson, and as well as my other grandchildren. And where Sheila and I can put the foundation, those things about being good people, being good for your community, good for your society, that is the fundamentals that we want to put into those children. And as being grandparents, we can put those we can talk about those values with our grandchildren, and they'll carry on, and they'll move generations from what we talk to them about what our values are. They will continue on with these values and move forward in future generations. And so I really feel that is one of the really important things, is to talk to your children or grandchildren about life and everything. There's no topic with our grandchildren that's off that you can't talk about it. You can talk about it.
Sure.
And so, but also our perspective, our values that we have, and they know Grandpa and Grandma were organic farmers. They know they were regenerative farmers, and my 2 daughters, they're both involved in the industry, in the organic industry. This will continue on.
I just want to thank you. That was very well said. I could honestly, Ron, I could probably talk to you for another hour or two, but it's a Sunday, and Sundays are precious, and I am very grateful that you even took almost about 90 minutes here with me, and And just again, grateful for you and Sheila and what you guys do for hundreds, thousands of families in producing the quality products that you do. We will always continue to support you, and we'll, come to your family farm days. My daughter, who's 3, has been to a couple of them, and I know she's just going to continue to look forward to them year after year. So please do not stop those, because we love them. I just want to thank you, because I've always had so many questions, and when Kyle and I were scoping out where we wanted to take the podcast and potential guests, I said we have to have someone from Sunworks, and he agreed, and he sends his regrets that he couldn't sort of be on the podcast today, but he certainly buys products from you guys as well. So I just want to thank you again for your time, and hopefully people get a lot out of this. To folks who are listening, I'll post links to Sunworks Farms if you ever want to check them out. They have an Instagram page. We'll link to them as well. And they have a lot of great information on their website about how they raise their animals and the details, which is why I didn't really get into too much of that today. But it's filled with incredible amount of transparency, which, anyone who's a consumer and wants information really craves for that, and they provide that. So thank you again so much, Ron. Appreciate your time, and I will see you at the farmers market.
Great talking.
Thank you, Ron. Bye-bye.